hopefully everyone can see that, but if not, can someone unmute themselves and just shout at me? So just to introduce myself, I'll be moderating today. So I'm the CEO at Hello Lamppost, and we're a digital public engagement platform. And today I'm joined by Dave Wursell, who's the ex-MD of Granicus, and also one of our advisors at Hello Lamppost, and his experience is very much a thought leader in public sector facing technology. We've also got Kathy Kyle, who is also one of our advisors at Hello Lamppost, and she is an award-winning branding, PR, marketing guru, especially when it comes to government-related comms. Just try and find my slides again. Here we go. We've also got Phil Harvey, who is also an award winner. So he's a senior cloud solution architect for data and AI at Microsoft. And we actually had the pleasure of meeting each other when we were part of Microsoft's AI for Good accelerator program, which I'm sure Phil could touch on. But Phil really became a bit of a mentor to us, bringing his sort of technology experience and background, and particularly his knowledge around AI to enhance cultural heritage. We've also got Davina Fell. I've just got a message, sorry, apparently my screen is going blank when I switch screen, so I will just riff without any slides. We've also got Davina Fell, who's the Digital Infrastructure Program Manager at Southwark Council. She is delivering many projects that focus on a positive social change and innovation within communities within the borough. And I think you can nod or shake your head, Davina. I think we first met at the Smart City UK Awards, where I think you picked up an award of some sort. And I know that since then we've been involved together in numerous conversations and projects between Hello Lamppost and Southwark when it comes to better engaging your communities. And last but not least, as an introduction, we've got Ollie Deed, who's the director at Engage, Communicate and Facilitate, who are, he won't mind me saying, pretty forward-thinking engagement consultancy, delivering projects across a number of different areas: infrastructure, built environment, construction, transport, education. I think I'm covering most of them. And we've actually partnered with ECF to deliver consultancy or engagement services and the Hello Lamppost platform in the UK. And more recently, we're actually deploying our first deployment in Australia together in Sydney, which is super exciting. So that's a brief introduction to everyone. Just to kick us off on the topics, and I can stop talking. So the focus for today is really around tech for good. As everyone probably knows, it's a really big movement, especially when it comes to the high street in current times. And really what sparked us to produce this webinar, or this series of webinars, was sparked really off a blog series that Kathy and Dave wrote about digitally transforming the high street, and linked to how tech can be used for good in that context. And I just want to start there actually, and start with Dave, and take a step back and cover some of his thoughts around tech for good. So Dave, just touching on that blog series that you created with Kathy, why do you think it's so important in terms of tech and saving the high street?
I think it's really quite important to sort of save the high street, but not in its sort of current state, in a kind of new state. High streets are kind of the hub of the community. And although it's kind of difficult at the moment with COVID and the restrictions to sort of get out and about and meet people, I think moving forward, that's exactly what we need to do. People's habits have changed. So I'm not sort of saying that we need to sort of go back to the old high street where there was sort of a large number of major sort of retail outlets and try and encourage people to shop in the way that they used to before. I think personally, it's a lot more convenient to do my shopping online. But as a community hub, as somewhere where you can go and meet and socialize and look at sort of more of the cultural aspects of the sort of traditional British high street, I think that is really, really important. And I think it's going to change. It's not going to be an analog high street that we saw, a few years ago. It'll be a digital high street. And I think that's where the tech for good and technology in general can be used as a way of bringing people back onto the high street, engaging digitally with each other, online, offline, and making that the real center of the local communities.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's actually a focus at the moment in current difficult and ever-changing times. And similar, Kathy, off the back of Dave's points and the blog series that you guys created together, can you tell us a bit more about how you've helped sort of businesses digitally transform their local areas?
Sure, absolutely. So I agree with Dave. I think it's really about thinking about the customer and about creating this almost a digital ecosystem, if you will, about how that serves their needs, especially today with COVID. And I've worked with brilliant bids on forward-thinking British bids on creating place marketing engagement where you create brand ambassadors out of shopkeepers and their customers and really focusing on their needs and using digital and earned media to do that. And so the way I did that was by creating websites and promotional films and social media campaigns and Insta-meets with photographers and supporting place marketing activities and just trying to train people, the businesses themselves, on owning that content and becoming the ambassadors for their town. And a lot of those local businesses are still my clients and friends. And so the way I've done that is to engage them where they are. And again, it's less about saving what's there and then really just looking at that customer journey. And it's really about personalization, I think, and putting people at the heart of everything that you do. And I'm working with another council too on. Yeah, exactly. And just trying to raise the profile of not just the business itself, but the town as well, and kind of amplifying everything together. And so it's like we work together to do that. And so that's what I've tried to do with people, and it works, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Kathy. And just taking a brief step back, I just want to speak with all the guest speakers here today, just on a more of a blue sky level about tech for good. And I just want to flick over to Phil and just ask in a few words, how would you define tech for good? What is it? What does that movement mean for you?
So, tech for good as a movement, it's sort of been on my radar for quite a long time. Organisations like DataKind, who are looking at bringing data science skills and things like that through to the third sector. But I think what it means to me is that people are choosing to bring more than just their time to the causes that matter to them. And as technologies become more pervasive and the skills are sort of more widely available to people, they're realizing that it's not just about showing up somewhere and, using their time and their physical presence. There are skills that they can bring, and there are technology landscapes there for them to work in. And I think that has led into the sort of organizational or the business agenda as well, where you go, it's not, when you talk about the high street and personalization in these things, it's not about necessarily buying into something much larger. It's about the people there and the skills that they've got. So I think everything from in my local town, there's like programming classes in the library for kids, and a large amount of volunteers go and work and do that work because they see that it's a skill they've got that they can share. And I think that's where David was talking about the sort of cultural hub piece. And so I think it's just going back to my original point, is people have realized that they don't just have to show up with their time. There are other skills that people can bring in.
Yeah, brilliant. And similar to Kathy's point, I think it's all community focused and almost an individualistic approach to that tech for good. And you've made, without making you blush, you've made significant contributions to Microsoft when it comes for the AI for Good program, and especially for us when we were part of that accelerator program. Can you tell the audience just a little bit more? You'll do a better job than I will about the program and actually how you've seen it impact the different focus areas for Microsoft.
Yeah, so I think when I mentioned the the Tech for Good movement moving into organizations. It's something that Microsoft's AI for Good program is a really good example of. You might have seen announcements around our stance on the climate emergency and the fact that what we say, neutral is not enough. We need to look at going carbon negative and removing our impact since the company was founded. That relates very strongly to our AI for Good program and the AI for Earth program within that, where we're looking to support organizations and people developing technologies for the purpose of improving biodiversity and combating the climate emergency and those pieces. There's also pillars around humanitarian action and accessibility and health and these pieces. I really focused in on the cultural heritage pillar of our AI for Good program, which is kind of where we met Tin and I met Hello Lamppost, because I believe that the educational possibilities, the flourishing that we can bring to people's lives by getting access through digital means to the cultural assets that are all around us. This can be an understanding of the languages that people speak. I mean, there are many, in the UK, you can think of Cornish and languages like that, which, could be lost. But the digital realm, they say nothing is ever lost on the internet. It just becomes harder to find. There are ways of dealing with that, ways of democratizing access to those cultural assets, which can help us learn and using modern platforms. And I think this is something that inspired me about Hello Lamppost, the idea that it's not about necessarily sitting at home, looking at a website, searching a collection, something like that. What can we do with these assets out in the world? And so when we look at the Microsoft AI for Good program, it's about having that real impact, using these technologies which we have available to us to make that difference. It's not about profit, sales, those kind of things. What it's about is using these things that we have to really bring to life the mission that everybody at Microsoft follows under, which is to empower everybody with this technology, every organization and every person on the planet to achieve more.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Phil. And I would just echo that actually, that having spoken to some senior people at Microsoft, actually, everyone is sort of living and breathing that, and it's kind of fairly refreshing to hear that senior members within Microsoft are almost philanthropic about the business, which is great. Just switching over to Ollie. Again, same initial question. If you can just frame in a few words or a couple of sentences what Tech for Good means for you.
Yeah, so first thing to say, I don't feel eminently qualified just having listened to Phil to talk about this. I have to say, if you told me 10 years ago that I'd be appearing on a platform like this, I'd have probably fallen over my typewriter and carrier pigeon. So I'm probably not best placed to talk about this. But in doing the research for this particular event, I came across a quote which was on the Tech for Good website, which I thought summarised it quite nicely, which is tech is neither good nor bad and definitely not neutral, which is why we need to be intentional about the use of tech in tackling the world's pressing social and environmental challenges, which I think is a nice summation of what Tech for Good is all about. And the reason why is I think it draws the distinction between tech that is meaningful and values driven against some tech, arguably, which it is not and is unnecessary and effectively wasteful. And I sort of apply that really to the community engagement space and that issue around tackling the world's pressing social and environmental challenges. And in our space, I think the types of things that Tech for Good should be addressing and the platform providers should be addressing are things like the growing disconnect between policymakers and citizens. As populism has taken a root around the world, we've seen an increasing polarization between communities. Is there a way that the Tech for Good movement can bring about technologies and platforms to address that? I think closely linked to that, it should be the Tech for Good movement should be looking at ways to disaggregate and disseminate information to people that equips them to make decisions that affect their own lives. And probably lastly, it's about making sure that the citizen becomes the decision maker in terms of the realm of policy that affects them on a day-to-day basis. So I would like to see the Tech for Good movement pursuing tools that are deliberative, are participatory, and improve our democracy. And actually, this is the reason why we've partnered up with yourselves, Tin, and is because I think Hello Lamppost is one of a few tools out there that can do all three of those things. So that was a rather long-winded way of summarising it. I
No,
think
that's great. I mean, you didn't do yourself justice by saying you're not qualified. That was a great answer, and totally agree. I think ourselves aside, we're seeing thankfully more and more tech for good platforms and technologies emerge that are all focused around those social challenges and environmental challenges. It's leading with problem rather than the technology. And just on that point around tech for good for positive social change, would you agree that successful community engagement, which is obviously what you're heavily focused in, could be a driving factor in actually pushing a lot of that, in terms of, you talked about democratizing access to technology and allowing people to drive their own decisions, and if so, how have you seen sort of effective digital engagement methods or tools that kind of deliver the right message to the right people?
I think I'd flip your proposition and say actually that the tech for good movement is the thing that can drive better community engagement, and that better community engagement will drive better tech for good. Because what I've witnessed over the last 2 years, I spent a period of time in Australia where they had adopted lots of tools to do this kind of stuff previously. What I've seen since I've been back in the UK is increasing number of platforms and tools like Hello Lamppost that have come into the marketplace that basically widen the participation level. And my general view of life is that we get to a much better place if we get a richness and a depth in the type of feedback that we're getting from our communities. And I think tools like Hello Lamppost do that. I can name check a few others as well that we've used over the course of the last couple of years, but certainly in the last 6 months there's been an acceleration in the adoption of community engagement tools that I think will stand the test of time for the long term. And that's not just about Microsoft Teams or whatever video conferencing platform you choose to use. That's about actual genuine participatory and deliberative democracy tools that are now out there, such as participatory budgeting or engagement with street objects or whatever it might be. I think it's really, really positive. But I think tech for good will drive good community engagement, which will then drive good tech for good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great. And I think there is, as part of that movement, there's a huge sort of breaking of status quos and digital nativeness that's emerging as well. Davina, just flicking onto you. Again, same question. If you could just summarize what tech for good means from your perspective.
Yeah, so I don't see it necessarily as a movement. I think it's something that I think all should be striving towards. It's when you think about consumers, they're thinking about the ethics of what they're buying. They're thinking, the corporate social responsibility element of it. But shouldn't all technology be created for good? And from a local authority's perspective, when we're looking at technology, we're looking at how it benefits society. The vulnerable, the elderly, the young, how it overcomes social barriers. Economical barriers as well. So and how it brings the technology together. Communities together. So when we're looking to procure technology, it's not just about the cost savings. It's looking at the actual social benefits. We'd rather spend millions of pounds on technology that saves lives or improves people's lives. So and there's an opportunity there. I feel that the demand and the opportunities are there to tackle that. So I feel
so all about putting communities first rather than technology first. And I quite like that point about tech for good almost being an inevitable goal that we're striving towards, as opposed to a movement that we're trying to push. And just going back to the point about putting communities at the heart, and almost striving for that positive change for existing and future generations. Can you tell us a bit more about how Southwark are looking at transforming local areas, and are they looking at specifically making them smart communities where the citizens can be empowered? And yeah, can you tell us a bit more about what you're working on and how Southwark are seeing that?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where the demand is there, but then you also have communities that don't embrace technology. So as a local authority, we're looking at, digital inclusion. That's one of our priorities, seeing how residents can embrace technology. Those, it's like the can't cook, won't cook situation, isn't it? Some just don't know how to use the technology, and some people just refuse flat. We've done a lot of work over the years improving connectivity, because we feel that that is the first steps to digitally enhancing, a borough like Southwark. And so, from fibre to the premises, where we have super fast broadband on all our estates, and then working with mobile network operators to improve, 4G, 5G. So for us, that it has been a priority. But now going forward, we're looking at, smart technology, how that improves our services. So, our residents are the users of those services. So how can we, make it easier, convenient? How can we gather that data to make those decisions better for the community as well? But most importantly, when I talk to the different services in the council, it's one of the things that we realise that we need to do better on is communicate, more effectively with residents. That's why we've been talking together, Tin, about how Hello Lamppost can widen the network, as opposed to the usual residents who engage with the community, so with the council. So it's one of those things where we definitely want to embrace it, but it's at the moment we're in a bit of a limbo as a local authority. Where we've got people who want to use that technology and want to see that advancement quickly, but those who sort of holding back a bit. So it's difficult for us.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Really good point. And I think that it sort of segues actually quite nicely onto the sort of next point I wanted to bring up and chat to everyone about, which is about embracing digital and embracing technology. I think, technology is advancing at an exponential rate, and people's willingness to change or adapt or learn is not as quick as that advancement. So there's a kind of chasm when you look at wider society, in terms of people embracing, whether it's a want or a being able to. And I just want to touch on that with everyone a little bit, just to hear about everyone's different perspectives. And just for the audience, I'd like to just pause and just say, anyone who has any questions, again, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll pick them up at the end and put them to the speakers. But yeah, just around embracing digital, I want to get everyone's different perspectives, because we have such a variety of speakers from different sectors, and I just want to get their perspective on the innovation around, well, our world, and the digital experiences they've seen when it comes to embracing digital, whether it's positive, negative, somewhere in between. So I'll just start with going back to Dave. I know that you've helped a number of local governments around the world to create effective comms campaigns and engagement on really, really wide audiences. Can you share maybe the biggest successes in terms of whether it's campaigns or methods, and how you're able to encourage those wider audiences to embrace the digital communication?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest successes have been the fact that government is embracing digital and better communication. So I've been in the game now for ages. I was a young boy when I started. And government has changed completely. I mean, 10 years ago, they were doing what has been termed SOS comms, which is sending out stuff. So the dreaded council newsletter where everything was about the council, the local authority, the leader. That's now changed now, and it's a lot more sort of focused on outcomes. So behavior change, getting people to change the way that they do things, to change their lives. A lot of that was driven by austerity, because government didn't have a lot of money to spend on, just the traditional, sending out type communications. They had to have a sort of business case and demonstrate value there. So I'm starting to see that a lot of communications and digital in government is focused on saving money or generating revenue, improving public safety, improving people's lives. And there's still the element of reputation, but it's done in the right way now. In terms of the campaigns that I've worked on that I think have been really successful, again, they're all sort of outcomes focused. So worked on a successful campaign with Sheffield about adoption and foster care. So encouraging more people to come forward, to certainly get onto the path and investigate fostering and adoption. Others have been involved, a campaign that we did with Southampton around volunteering. So again, encouraging people to come forward and volunteer. That one was really successful and ended up with having to stop the campaign because too many volunteers had come forward. And then sort of other really simple campaigns, just getting people to put the bin out on the right day or to sign up for a garden waste collection. So they're all focused on outcomes there. The thing that's really important with this, though, it all depends on the size of the audience. So when I was the MD at Granicus in the UK, it was really successful. We ended up with about 18 million people signed up to receive the information. So the size of the audience is absolutely key. But the hard to reach audience is the one that's really challenging. So trying to get the Gen Zs and the millennials signed up. So of that 18 million, it was a large number, but it was the usual suspects. Trying to get the ethnic minorities and the younger people signed up has always been a problem for government in general. And that's why I liked Hello Lamppost. It's because it goes right to the heart of that community again. It's at the sharp point of engagement. It's encouraging the people that wouldn't usually engage with government to get involved, to sign up, to express an opinion. And I think that that's absolutely key. The message is only as good as the audience who receives it and acts upon it.
Yeah, great. And from your experience from those successful campaigns, are you almost seeing with the emergence of different technologies that different mechanisms like the high street are able to act as a new comms channel to gather those wider audiences?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the more places that you can engage with people, the more diverse the audience that you engage with, the better. So relying on people to come to a council website and sign up or to follow you on social media is great, but it's that certain kind of audience. Having different points of engagement online, offline, through talking to a lamppost or a park bench, it's just getting a wider, broader range of people. So that's absolutely key if you're going to get a very diverse range of views.
Yeah, great. Davina, I just want to get your thoughts on that as well. I know that Southwark, when it comes to councils in the UK, it is considered, one of the digital leaders when it comes to, embracing technology that is focused around neighbourhoods and communities. So, any thoughts on Dave's point? But also, I want to ask, what do you want, I guess, from digital to achieve on the high street and for Southwark in the long term?
We deliver a lot of services on the high street. We work with the local businesses. We want it to be a vibrant place. We want it to be a location that, people enjoy. And so, we are moving more towards a digital high street. We're working with companies who want to provide more digital services, from EV charging points and, other interactive digital services. So, it's going down that route and it'll be interesting how it moves forward over the coming years. But I suppose for us, as a borough, we want to make sure that, again, it's benefiting the local community. So, we've done things like, within our planning team, improving our planning processes there, digitally enhancing that, collecting data to make better decisions. we're also keen on augmented reality, you know, how we can engage with visitors on the high streets in a different way, and they can experience you know, a different way in which they can use that space. So you know, there's so many ideas out there. It's I suppose as a local authority, we're always thinking about sustainability and thinking about whether, you know, what it actually delivers in terms of adding value to, you know, to what we do. So for us, it is about, at the moment, looking at our services, seeing how we could be more efficient, but also improve that social value for residents, so that Southwark is a place for them to enjoy. You know, we're lucky we've got the South Bank, we've got Borough Market, and those you know, attract so many visitors into the borough. So again, it links to the economy. So you can see how technology and us striving for that, you know, for that advancement, helps us to become a more sort of forward-thinking borough.
Yeah, great. No, that makes sense. And Ollie, from your perspective, obviously working with a lot of local authorities yourself, are you seeing a similar? Would you agree with Davina? Are you seeing a similar trend?
I can't talk to Southwark because I don't work with Southwark, but it sounds like Davina is one of the progressives in local government pushing these sorts of things, because I have to say, and this is based purely on anecdote, my experience is that local authorities are not particularly good at this sort of stuff. And the reason why is that they don't have the skills internally to be able to manage it. They don't really. I'd be interested to know if Davina has colleagues from other local authorities across London and the country that do a similar job to that which she does. And if they don't, I think they should start recruiting these types of people very, very quickly. I think what we've seen over the last 6 months, particularly in the public the planning realm, there have been some positives. Planning committee meetings have moved online very swiftly, which has been a good thing, and it should remain. Local authorities are much more amenable now to having remote meetings with developers and applicants, which is great. And local authorities are increasingly adopting technologies that are designed to increase the participation rate in their consultations. But from my perspective, most local authority websites are dreadful and they're inaccessible. The vast majority of them are presenting information in PDFs, which is probably the least accessible type of content that you can provide. And I think the problem is that the approach is very different depending on the local authority. You get some very good ones that are progressive, and you get some other ones that are, to be honest, not interested in widening participation rates. Therefore, they won't adopt these digital technologies, and you just have to navigate it. So I think it's a mixed picture, but it's great to hear that there's some good work going on in Southwark. And, you know, Davina, get out into the other London boroughs and start banging the drum, because there are people that need to take on your sort of progressive style of approach.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I mean, that's why we're so happy to have Davina on the call. I think it is because she is such a forward thinker and has the knowledge and skill sets to understand how technology can be not just for technology's sake, but for community focused as well. And we are starting to see, certainly from our perspective, you know, more and more public sector organisations wanting to change that status quo. And wanting to drive that embrace of digital, obviously all with the focus of bettering our communities and for the social challenges. One thing we have seen, and I'm sure everyone's seen, is that being strained further, certainly when it comes to comms and engagement in current times, where, you know, some traditional methods can't happen. You know, we can't have face-to-face meetings, and we can't have town hall meetings, etc. So I just want to touch on that a little bit and just flick over to Kathy and see from her perspective how she's helped and seen organisations respond to the crisis from a comms perspective.
Sorry, I was looking for my mute button. So the different on across every sector, always the same advice, and that's try to pivot in the face of a crisis. And I give everyone the same advice, which is what you do probably won't change very much, but how you do it will. And try to focus on finding the right technology that fits for you. And I found that my clients are at different levels of modernization. And it's kind of like what you were saying earlier, Sharon, about that chasm, like their willingness to adopt a new technology. And I was working with the CEO of a nonprofit, and they had to move all of their events online. And they work with 18 to 25-year-olds, and they work on social justice and environmental issues, and so everything had to go online. And so it was trying to help them find ways to find the opportunity in that, in the challenge. And the way we did that was basically, this is our opportunity to promote the organization, promote the participants in their social justice programs, and to use that as an opportunity and to promote the nonprofit itself. And right now I'm working with a local authority, and we're doing the whole thing. We've got the internal communication strategy, the external communication strategy, the integrated branding program, the whole 9 yards. And my suggestion to them, because of where they are in terms of what they want to bite off in terms of technology, we've built a microsite, like a hub for resources for all of their businesses. And so that's where we are in terms of technology adoption and what they want to do. And it's fantastic because that's the level of resources and that they want to implement. So I'm really excited about that because we're offering something to the businesses and they're adopting it, and it's where we are. But I think it's just really knowing where your clients are and understanding how you can help them get to that point, and then just push them a little bit more to just help them adopt. I think it's a balance.
Yeah, I suppose there's
knowing your audience.
There's probably different levels of that chasm in terms of tech understanding and understanding how to use tech for their purpose and
and resources too. So, and then finding the right partners too in the community to work with them and to get them where they need to be as well.
Yeah, great. And just off the back of that, Phil, you can shoot me down, but I would consider AI for good very much going hand in hand with tech for good. AI is a form of technology, and obviously you're heavily involved in AI and AI for good. I drew just a couple of facts before firing this question at you, but it's estimated that 80% of emerging technologies by 2021 will involve AI, and already over 37% of organizations have implemented AI in some form. And obviously it's integral to Microsoft's work at the moment, and it's obviously built into their mission and vision going forward. And I just want to hear from you in terms of your experience in AI. What value do you think, and it's a pretty big question, but what value do you think AI brings to organizations and has the potential to bring?
I think in your quote there, I'm not going to shoot you down because everything you said is very astute, but you did say embracing AI in some form, and that's where I kind of want to start.
Sure.
Because so just for everybody around, I graduated around 2002 with a degree in artificial intelligence before it was cool, so ultimately an AI hipster, if you will. But we didn't really have the compute or the data to run the algorithms that we were learning about. So, I built neural networks by hand and genetic algorithms and all this kind of stuff. And so tracking that field over the last, 18 to 20 years, it's been fascinating to see what people are allowed to call AI. AI is a sort of umbrella of these many technologies, from simple automation through to machine learning, spam filtering, chatbots. There's, self-driving cars. There's such a broad gamut. It's hard, when somebody says what's the 37% or the statistic you gave around businesses adopting it. Well, every business who uses email has a spam filter, and a spam filter is built into that and is, by some definition, artificially intelligent. So 100% of businesses who use email have some form of AI. I think the value question then comes in, which is what can we do now that we couldn't do before? So there's a great conversation around facial recognition as a form of identity and the ethics of using that, whether that's, you know, everything from policing the high street, and you'll see, you know, BBC Click has some great content around the challenges that that can face, all the way through to using it to identify people for security purposes. So you have built trust that the person who's using that digital technology has been verified as the person who is authorized to use that technology in an area of active consent. That's incredibly powerful. But then what we're really talking about here is you can talk about artificial intelligence and it bringing value from spam filtering to facial recognition. But I think what this call represents that's so incredibly important is this concept of the digital humanities. Technology is almost the easy part. It's people that are difficult. And the rise of the digital humanities is incredibly important. We have principle-based approaches to artificial intelligence ethics from the top down. The digital humanities, the digital sociologists, the user researchers, the people who work in those fields are doing the bottom-up work to apply this technology. So it's not just value to business, but it's value to us as a society. And that's what I think brings the most value to us. So I can build an algorithm that recognizes, you know, different kinds of fruit. And that's technically possible for anybody. But there are people who are detecting types of waste. There are people who are detecting, you know, on a global scale, the emergence of illegal small-scale mining from satellite images. You know, there's this full range of ways we can do it. But actually, the technologists often become obsessed with the details of the technology. And we need that help to understand the context of people, to have that empathy out into the society, to be able to apply it to add value to people, not just the optimization of a particular business process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good point, because it comes back to the point we made around being challenge, being challenge and benefit focused, as opposed to, you know, let's understand and be empathetic to our communities and the audiences that have certain challenges, and use technology and AI to benefit those challenges, as opposed to, here's a great bit of AI or tech, what can we do with it?
Tina, can I be a bit naughty and interject?
Of course.
Just on that note, I think, Phil, what you said was absolutely fascinating. What I'd love to see, wedding the AI and the community engagement piece together, is a citizens' assembly in the UK on the use of you know, AI, what ethics we're going to apply moving forward, and actually have a national conversation about how we're going to use this, you know, for the humanitarian reasons that you talked about, rather than just, you know, commercial gain, etc., etc. So perhaps we can start the campaign today.
Excellent. I'll wait for your email on that, Ollie. And I was actually going to flick it back to Davina and Ollie, just around narrowing down on the challenges of the high street, and you know, which was in a certain amount of flux pre-coronavirus, let alone now. Just wanted to get your thoughts, any thoughts, opinions, or ideas around how you sort of envisage AI and technology affecting or improving, benefiting the high street, however that may look going forward.
So for us, I mean, data is so important. It allows us to make decisions better. You know, at the moment, I'm looking at developing a platform where we look at mobile phone data to understand a bit more about pedestrian flows, traffic flows, and laying that with spend data as well. So it gives us that, you know, we can develop those algorithms so we can look at best alternative diversion routes, you know, when there are road closures, when, you know, when we're looking at high streets, how can we benefit them, you know, when we're doing works as well. So the data for us is so important. And I mean, automation, we're not there yet in terms of artificial intelligence. There is, you know, we're always risk averse as a local authority. There is that concern about Big Brother and us, you know, collecting all that data for alternative means. But, you know, it goes back to the subject technology for good. You know, we want that data so that we can make better decisions for the community. So yeah, we're still early days yet in terms of AI, but it's definitely something we want to strive towards.
Right. Yeah, really nice point. And I'm close off and open up the floor for questions. So if anyone does have any questions, I know there's a few coming in. I'll try and get through most of them, but feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll just pick a couple. Davina, you're going to have to come back off mute, but I think this one's for you. How has Southwark already made improvements to the area based on its citizen needs and interest?
So yeah, as I mentioned, it's about the data. So, with our, planning, we've used, with our Plan Tech project, we're using data to inform us better on, negotiating Section 106 agreements, identifying, when we're making agreeing planning applications, we've got the data to support us in, in terms of what our development plans, etc. So it's hidden. It's things that you as a member of the community wouldn't necessarily see, but it's collecting that information to make our decisions better.
Sure, yeah. And actually, sorry, another one for you which has come through, which is related, is the point you made around the perception of AI and that data collection, and have you done any work or is there any thoughts around how you counteract those challenges around citizen perceptions?
Yeah, so it's kind of linked to the digital inclusion or digital education element of the stuff that I'm working on. So we're really keen to engage more with the community, organise hackathons, work with schools to educate them about, how technology can, and digitalising services can benefit them. And the more that residents understand, the more they're willing to accept. That's our view. So it's a lot of hard work, but we feel that could benefit. It's the trust element of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's something that we often have heard and talk about, is that kind of feedback loop. As long as everyone is, or as many people as possible are in the loop, then there is that understanding of the benefits as to why data is being collected and why AI is being used. Another one for Dave. How have you seen applied innovation technology solutions to solve problems in our cities? Quite a broad question.
It is quite a broad question, yeah. So I think sort of from personal experience, obviously a lot of sort of digital innovation around things like Hello Lamppost, so trying to get that digital engagement with citizens, and then using that engagement to consult on a number of different projects, or to disseminate information, or to gather feedback. So again, Hello Lamppost and other technologies I've seen being used really well to provide that consultation approach. So for example, we're thinking of putting in an electric bike rack here. Is this a good location for it? Is there somewhere else that we should be doing this? Provide additional feedback on X, Y, and Z. I think that works really well. To answer one of the other questions that's popped up in the chat as well, digital innovation and sort of transforming businesses and everything else. I think the NHS app that's come out now with the QR codes is absolutely amazing. The fact that, QR codes are now going mainstream. So you can check into locations, you can use that to give you information about COVID, whether you've come into contact with people, and then you can extend that further to do sort of digital trails around the city where you're sort of checking into locations and having sort of vouchers and encouraging people to shop in other areas there. We're also seeing, again, COVID has probably been the biggest driver of digital transformation in the last 10 years, again, out of necessity. So starting to see a huge amount of interest in businesses wanting to have mobile apps where you can do order ahead, order at a table in a cafe. So not just the great big chains that have had it for a while, but sort of smaller chains and things like that. So you can avoid contact and do that sort of seamless digital sort of transactions there. So it's a massive, massive question. There's so many different examples, but hopefully I've given you a few there.
Yeah, that's great. And a really good point about recent times, driving that kind of digital nativeness, that comfort with digital, even if it's on a small scale in terms of video conferencing like we're doing now, or with QR codes, right? I think it's going to be a huge step change.
I think it goes back to that earlier question to Davina as well about the challenges around the perception of AI and other digital technologies. I think COVID has maybe sort of changed a lot of that overnight. People, haven't had a choice. They've had to embrace these digital technologies. They're happy to do things in a different way. So I think that's moving that conversation ahead really quite quickly at the moment.
Yeah, definitely agreed. One that's coming for Phil is, what steps is Microsoft taking to empower people through technology?
I really like that question, so thanks to the person who asked it. The simplest answer when it comes to AI, for example, is aischool.microsoft.com. So I'll just sort of read a URL off there. We'll be quite happy to share the materials afterwards. We're providing a large amount of free learning content, and this is both from a technology perspective, as you might imagine, but also something called the AI Business School, for example, which gives a lot more of that context for organizations and people who aren't necessarily on the journey. So it starts with skills for us, but also when you look at the investments through the AI for Good program and the financial support that's available for organizations who are trying to do good with technology, that's also there as well.
Nice. Great, thank you. Just conscious of time, so I'll finish with one final question. So this one says, there's a potential issue of a tech gap where access and benefit from tech is still out of reach of certain communities. So it's almost a vicious cycle where those who could most benefit are actually locked out. And I'll open this question up to the floor, whoever wants to jump in. But how do you see Tech for Good addressing this gap?
I'm happy to start and just say, does it need to address the gap? And is there always an alternative option available? Whenever we run engagement processes that are digital led, we always provide people with a physical form to engage with us in. And there will always be people that will not engage with the technology for one reason or the other. So it's just important to provide an alternative. Just get as many people as you can doing the digital stuff, but make sure that you provide an alternative. I'm sure Davina and councils across London are doing a lot of work around digital inclusion, but you won't get everybody. So always be prepared to offer an alternative.
Does anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, if I add to that, so we are doing a lot of work on that. So we've got digital champions within the council services and also volunteers that are, reaching out to residents who are afraid to use technology. But it's one of those things where, as a council, we also need to make sure that we provide a service for those who don't access that. But I was just going back to some of the questions there. I was just looking. So, in terms of, understand getting the voice of residents, Hello Lamppost has been, as a product is quite helpful for us, where we've used yourselves in terms of, gathering that data, and it's that simplicity of, a text message. It doesn't have to be a whizzy app that someone has to download. So it's with AI as well, that's when it becomes a lot more easier to navigate through a lot of the technology. So I think as technology advances, people will become it'll be easily adaptable. But as I said before, we're kind of in a limbo at the moment where we have those of the digital savvy people who want to see that progress really quickly, but those are still very reticent about it. So I think in the future you'll see a change, and we've seen a change over the last 6 months anyway. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I was going to add, I mean, there's those that can, there's those that can't, and there's those that won't. And those that won't are going to be really difficult to get them to use the digital tools that are out there. Those that can't, I think that nap is narrowing now. Technology is a lot more accessible, and I'm not exactly sure what the percentage is, but I think around 98% of people in the UK have a mobile device. It may not be smart, but it is mobile. So as Davina was saying, there's ways in which you can use a sort of non-smartphone to engage and sort of start that digital journey. But I think you have to embrace the technology. You have to go ahead with these programs and invest. And if they work well and they streamline and they save money, that money can be invested in helping those that can't get the skills that they need. So that kind of assisted or hand holding to a digital process is where we need to get to.
Great. I am going to have to close there. Sorry for all the questions we didn't get through. I just want to say massive thanks, and it was amazing. I'm sure all the attendees will agree to hear all of the different perspectives on how we are all in different areas trying to use tech to positively impact our communities and societies. So I just want to say a massive thank you and a virtual round of applause to the guest speakers for joining and taking the time out their busy days. Before everyone leaves the webinar, I just want to say that there will be a follow-up email with a QR code where you'll be able to interact with our platform, and that's just to hear your thoughts on and opinions and stuff on what you thought about the webinar. It's very simple. You'll see an email with a QR code, and you just have to scan it and have a quick chat. Really appreciate any feedback so we can continue to improve along this webinar series. Again, massive thank you to all of our guest speakers. If you want to hear from any of them, or indeed from us at Hello Lamppost, just feel free to respond to any of the emails that you're receiving about the webinar. And we are 2 minutes early in finishing, but I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you again to all of our guest speakers. We will be doing more as part of this series, so keep an eye out for the future webinars. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.